Welcome to Reddit Chronicles. Here are today's stories. If you're new here, do consider subscribing to help me feed my channel and grow my cat. And if you like the video, do kindly give it a thumbs up to help me out. Let's get started. Wife cheated, so I tricked her into publicly admitting to having the affair and herpes. Okay, so I'm the coworker that encouraged him to post this. Unfortunately, your account has to be 7 days old to post here, so I gifted him an alt I made for a joke about a month ago. This story is about 12 years old. I told it to one of my coworkers yesterday, and he said I should share it on Reddit. Today, he again nudged me, so here we are, having drinks before the 4-day weekend, and my writing is complete. So first time here, and hi y'all. Sorry if there are typos. I included a TLDR at the end. In college, I met the woman who I thought was my one. We dated for about 2 years, and had a big-ass wedding after a 10-month engagement. Her family was pretty well-to-do in a small southern town. We were both continuing our educations, and I was also working to support us. I was pursuing a master's in engineering, while she was finishing her doctorate in anthropology. Over the summer, an opportunity came up for her to make some extra money, going as an aide on a religious studies trip to Jamaica. I didn't hesitate when she asked about it. I mean, she was going to get to visit Jamaica, and get paid for it. I saw no downside, other than missing her being at home for 6 weeks. Little did I know at the time, but she had been a professor. He hung out with us, smoked my weed, and drank my beer. I considered him a friend, who arranged the trip for a couple months, and it was a getaway for them to bang all over the island. I, clueless and happy, went about the weeks while she was gone, taking extra shifts so I could match what she made in our account and surprise her. What a dipshit, right? One of the students from the trip actually seeked me out to clue me in. I didn't believe it until I started for evidence on my own. I broke down and checked her texts while she was sleeping, and nothing was there. There were a few voice messages, so I decided to listen, and there it was, a message from that giant a-hole saying how exciting it was that I almost caught them. I opened up her laptop and hit the emails after that. It was piles and piles of shit making fun of me for not knowing, in our bed and laughing about it. There was so much, and I was so heartbroken. Still too hurt to take any action. I was lost. I had no idea what to do, so I sat on it for a couple of weeks and acted as normally as I could. I noticed everything now. I felt so stupid for not seeing it before. So many signs, one stuck out in particular. I noticed that our stash of homemade weed lube, if you've never tried it, I highly recommend giving it a go, was going down, even though we weren't having sex. It was obvious they were also using the fruits of my labor to get off more effectively. This really pissed me off, like, unreasonably so. Hulk mad. It finally all hit me. I was a goddamn joke to these a-holes, and they were using the lube I made and in my bed. I didn't hurt anymore. I just wanted to make them hurt. So while she was studying at the library, I made a new batch of lube. I put enough weed in it for it to smell like normal, but I also added some poison ivy from our backyard to the mixture, and after refilling the spray bottle we used for application, I waited. A few days go by, and I'm working extra so I can be out of the house more, and bam, bait taken. That night, after she goes to sleep, my plan goes into action. I sneak her phone away and delete my contact while replacing his phone number in his contact as mine. I go to bed, but can't sleep because it feels like I'm 5 and tomorrow is Christmas. Dawn arrives and she's in the shower. I get a text. "I'm super itchy. Are you okay?" Now, Lord, now is my time. "Look, I thought it had cleared up, but I guess I had a flare-up. I'm sorry, but I've got herpes, and I guess you do too now." I heard this bitch squeak in the shower. I'm covering my mouth, damn near losing it. I went on to tell her that it was time to end things now. A new semester was about to start, and I kind of have a little crush at another TA. I wanted her mad. This is a woman that never got told no growing up, and never had to deal with rejection, let alone from a balding dude in his 50s with herpes. When she got out of the shower, it was obvious she'd been crying, but I could see the anger in her eyes. I could see how uncomfortable she was, squirming at the table, drinking coffee and mulling the situation over. Another little nudge is what she needed. The reply she got to her pages and pages of anger and sadness was, "Thanks for the good times, but can you keep this secret between us? I don't want it to ruin my chances with anyone else." She's flush with anger now, just seething. She gathered her keys and headed out the door without even saying goodbye. I knew where she was going. I booted up her laptop and set it to reformat, deleting her dissertation and any notes pertaining to it before following her to campus. I parked a few lots over and rush over to his office, where I find her screaming at him for giving her herpes. There's a lot of people there. Professors, aides, students, other faculty. I'm dying. He is beyond embarrassed and confused as she is ugly crying in front of her peers. I'm in heaven. I didn't even care that people were going to think that I had herpes too. The fallout was apocalyptic in their department. He lost his job due to code of conduct at the university. We got divorced the following year. State law was that we had to be separated for 1 full year before being granted a divorce. I got to keep most of the assets, primarily savings, and not a ton, but I worked for it. She never finished her doctorate and went on to be a perpetually pregnant housewife that sells Herbal Life on Facebook, and he teaches high school now. It took a few years for it all to unfold, but watching it was glorious. That was some pro-revenge. It was categorized as nuclear because he kind of totally destroyed both of their lives, but switching out the contact number and getting his cheating wife to be the one that tells everyone about the affair, that was pro. Don't mess with this guy. The next one doesn't focus on infidelity, but it's got a somewhat similar theme. Don't mess with IT students, or just techies in general. It's also rather long, so if you need to do something in the next 20 minutes or so, pause the video and do it now. Steal my scholarship after I saved your school? I'll destroy your life. Hello, posting this on a throwaway because I don't want people finding me. Written on mobile, I suck at English. And this isn't a bully story. Kid never messed with me until this. Also posted this on pro-revenge, was removed for not being pro, but nuclear. By the way, these people have gone to great lengths to find me. Blessed with a common name, I've avoided them. Attempts were made on my life, as in almost ran over. Someone tried to burn our house down. So please understand, I can't post anything that can lead these people to catch any hint as to where I am. I can't risk one of you finding these people and leading them to me. This seems like it's going to be quite a story. A long time ago, in the year of 2004, I attended a shitty high school. They cut costs on everything, and I mean everything, but teachers' wages. Only way to keep them. It was an alternative school. My father is in IT, so I was around computers all my life. This was a known fact. I'd constantly break into school computers just to play SNES ROMs. Most of the time no one cared, and the computer lab teacher loved me because I'd constantly be repairing for her. Such a sweet lady. Shout out to Mrs. Bell. Love you! Anyway, so our school had about 200 computers, and they all sucked. Not a single one was good. Well, there was one that I upgraded with my own parts to play games. I donated it to Mrs. Bell, and only her and I got to touch it. So I do a cast introduction, but there's so many, I'll just do it as I go. Enter Evil Principal and his son, Evil Kid. Me and Mrs. Bell. Entitled Principal was a cheap man and an a-hole. He'd get me to repair electronics for him, and not even pay me or give me extra credits. Entitled Kid thought he was good at computers. He just knew how to format. That's the solution to everything. CPU running slow? Format. So the school did well in a statewide test. I'm talking, no student got below 90. And our state is stupid. So we got a huge grant to upgrade our computers. Now, being a cheap man, our teacher uses a sleazy-ass computer shop and has them ordered. I offered to help, but Entitled Kid was already on the job. They ordered 250 new CPUs, and they're pretty decent, and Evil Principal pockets the rest of the fund. This comes up later. So, 250 CPUs are delivered. Mrs. Bell and I get to work, while Evil Principal and Entitled Kid and their swarm go off for a family vacation as it's spring break. We give up ours because he threatens to fire Mrs. Bell if anything goes wrong. So after about 50 CPUs, we were 2 days in. The cheap cut out the power to everything that wasn't important. I get to the front office, take a break, and decide to boot up one of these bad boys because the secretary still worked, and I can start data transferring. When I come to see, no f***ing operating system has been installed. That's right. No keys, no OS, nothing. The cheap elected to not get it because it saved him $100 per machine. That stupid f***ing cheap I run to Mrs. Bell, and the fact that I was running meant she knew something was up. Not a runny type of kid. Mrs. Bell, oh my god, what? Me, Mr. Evil Principal didn't buy the OS keys. She was dumbfounded, got up, and exited. Suddenly, the overhead lights came on, and we boot 60 CPUs to find not a single goddamn one had an OS installed. Now she panics and is a by-the-book gal and calls Evil Principal. I didn't get to hear much, but I caught the tail end. I don't see this as an emergency. I was with my family. Sir, this is an emergency. We need the keys. No money for keys. Then no computers. You got 250 paperweights. That sounds like your problem. Buy the keys yourself. I can't afford that, and you know how much those are. Either I have running computers or a new CPU teacher by Monday. Click. Oh, I was pissed because I never saw Mrs. Bell cry. So I dialed my dad and asked for a solution as he was off, and he said he'd be right down. We set up, and my dad and his 3 IT crew show up. They were pissed too, but they had beer and brought the party to the school. Now, this wasn't a break the law plot, just have some fun while doing a shit ton of free work, as they were on vacation and were going to be here for days. We had 30 disks of an unnamed OS on my father's corporate key. His work gave him one for home use, and he was ready to help. So 3 days later, we had 250 computers set up, wired the whole school, wired network internet, upgraded all the school software, installed everything. Beers were drunk. We camped in the school. We even watched movies off a projector. It was a blast. The next Monday, everyone came back from vacation to see shiny new computers. We spent the next 2 days assigning logins to the staff and students, teaching others how to use the new systems. Mrs. Bell was hailed as a hero by staff, and everyone knew I helped. But now, the betrayal. You see, Mrs. Bell's deeds didn't go unnoticed, and she was offered a fancy new job. She hated Evil Principal and took it. Since she would no longer be teaching, and there was only one CPU class for stragglers, entitled Principal let her go with no shade. 2 weeks before she left, she wrote a letter for a scholarship program the school offered for a tech school in their district. Think high school for mega nerds. Gave copies to me and entitled Principal and departed, but in her absence, things started going south. CPUs needed fixing, and an important note, locker thefts started occurring. Bad. I'm talking so bad, the superintendent installed cameras in the locker areas because parents were getting pissed. Now we hold an assembly to honor the good students and all that shit, and it's a well-known fact of my deeds. The super's there, Evil Principal, entitled kid, and his mom were there. My parents didn't have the time. It was cool. I didn't care. They get down the list, and then the story. How a teacher and a student gave up their vacation, how they rescued the school from an ordering error, lol, and how they wish the teacher was here to honor her, but they can honor the student in her place. I grinned. I was being praised by the man who I hated most. It was orgasmic, and lucky I was wearing baggy pants to hide my massive erection. Evil Principal, please, a round of applause to entitled kid, my son, for saving the school's computers. Your actions have not gone unnoticed, as you have gotten a full scholarship to the tech school. I didn't hear the rest, as my world went red. My friend held me back as to not charge the stage. I was literally gonna kill those mother effers with my bare hands. I do remember the booing. I left for the day. I was livid. They just took credit for my work, stole my scholarship, treated Mrs. Bell poorly, and thought I'd take it? Revenge wasn't enough. No, I was going to destroy them. Finally, the revenge. Weeks had passed by. I had exactly 1 month to do this with a group of 8 who knew the whole story and were literally the 8 smartest students. The Revenge Council was formed. We never met on school grounds, never at the same place twice, followed a strict set of rules, and we formed our plans. They only helped me form the plan. I did the legwork. So phase 1. This was to destroy Entitled Kid. So I spoke with the super and told him the story, how I was being robbed. He said I'd need proof. That was easy. I already had it. But I needed time, so I said, let me collect it. He said he'd also look into it. I needed him to distract Evil Principal. Now I didn't have access to school functions, but Mrs. B did. I contacted her and explained what happened. She was pissed. She said she'd come in and fix it, but I mentioned I needed to make sure this never happened again. Oh, that laugh of hers. So adorable. I crushed hard. She was beautiful. The council had our 9th member. I just needed one thing, her login, and she happily provided. As long as there was no trail, cameras are now under my control. Now remember the locker thefts? Well, cruising the cameras we confirmed who we thought the thief was. And guess who the culprit was? Entitled Kid had used Evil Principal's login to access the locker combo sheet and was stealing shit, covering his tracks by deleting camera footage. Not this time though, not this time. See, my dad had gotten a new laptop and gifted me with his old one, at the time, a $2,500 custom-made laptop. That thing was my main computer for years after this, but I had to risk it. So one day, I brought it to school, showed it off, played some heavy graphic games. Entitled Kid buddied up to me. His eyes lit up. The bait was set. He followed me, talking video games, inviting me to his place for some game sessions as I'm walking to my locker. He turns around, as per school rule, not to see my combo, and I place my laptop bag in, as my next class is PE, and his was free study. Bait in the trap. He asks, "Aren't you afraid of it getting stolen?" "Nah, my dad can always get me another from work. Plus that," points to camera. "Yeah, those catch everything. Plus I heard they caught the thief. Dad says it's proven. He's gonna announce it." That's a relief. Get with me after school. I live close, and we can walk home and game out. I leave the direction of PE, but that's not my class. I had free study. I stealth my way into the math class and tell the teacher I'm updating CPUs, and he loves me and allows me and starts his class. I watch the cams. 20 minutes later, Entitled Kid shows up with a garbage bag, pulls a notebook, opens my locker, and grabs laptop. Opens the bag to confirm it, pulls it out, and places it in the garbage bag. Grabs the mouse and charger too, returns laptop bag, and leaves. He's wearing gloves, thinks he's clever. I save the file, wait another 20 minutes, solve a math problem for the class, look to see the file for that area is deleted. I hide the copied files and restore them. Hiding was just a backup, didn't need it, but I wanted a copy to which I still have this day. Phase 1, complete. Phase 2. At lunch, I go to the locker and pretend to discover my empty bag. I was with a council member. She runs to grab the school cop, and they come. As they are real cops, he radios for a squad car, and I shit you not, 5 cars showed up, and they locked that shit down. They were about to launch a locker search, but decided to check the cameras. This was done in Evil Principal's office, where Entitled Kid happened to be playing games. Evil Principal comes in and gives them access. Evil Principal, "Some reason the files are corrupt. It's a recent problem that we're fixing." Entitled Kid smirks. Cop says, "Okay, guide me to today's cameras. And which one is in that area?" "I think camera 6. "Wrong." "No, it's cam 9, you dense f***er." Cop, "Here it is, I found it. File's fine." Entitled Kid goes white. I wish I could tell you what happens next, but I was excused as they found their culprit. Then I see it. Entitled Kid and Evil Principal walk out with 2 police escorts, and I'm called back in. I get to see the footage. Cop 3 shows me that Entitled Kid was the one who stole it. I acted shocked. I'm good at acting too. Sobbing slightly, "He was my friend, how could he?" etc. 15 minutes, he walks in and hands me the laptop. "I'm so sorry, please don't press charges, I just wanted to play it, I was gonna put it back." Cop: "It's out of his hands, as the value of the item was more than $1,000. I'm afraid it's a felony. Charges will be filed. Turn around and your hands behind your back." Evil Principal's face sunk. His boy was the school thief. He used his dad's login to get locker combos and delete the cams. They searched his house and found over $5,000 of stolen property in his room. He was but I wasn't done yet. As he rotted in jail, it was Evil Principal's turn. This phase was not as long, as they only had to do one thing. Word hadn't reached school yet. Evil Principal covered his son with a coat as he was let out, and I was told not to say a word to anyone, but the super was going to question me on the incident. After a long questioning, he brings up the proof. I said, yes, I had it, and presented a copy of the letter Mrs. Bell wrote. He read it, jaw-dropping, and quickly calls her. After a brief phone call, a meeting was set up. Evil Principal, Superintendent, and Mrs. Bell and my dad also came. We explained what happened, how I gave up my entire week to save the school's computers, how my father came in and did free work, how this could have been prevented if an evil principal wasn't so cheap. But as with all great plans, you can't plan for everything. I expected a sacking. I got much more. See, it came to light how much the budget was, and how much was really spent. So where was the rest? Turns out, Evil Principal stole it. He skimmed the top off of a lot of budgets, but he hid this one as he thought well. I don't know the details to that one, but he uses the excuse of the OS keys. My dad pipes up when he tries. Dad, I donated my personal corporate key, super corporate key. I think he made a mistake there. It lets me install the OS as many times as I want. It's how we didn't have to buy 250 keys. He explained it to the super, and he was shocked. He showed the super proof that the key was his, and pulled up the CPU to show that they were the same. Evil Principal had no way out. Me, why didn't the tech school get this letter? Evil Principal, in sobs. I had to approve all letters sent on the school's behalf. She no longer worked here when the time came. BS! You had 2 weeks to send it. You just wanted to steal my scholarship for your thief of a kid. Every class on that floor heard me shout that. Dad and I left, and Super and Evil Principal were going to talk. Dad, if my son doesn't get that scholarship by tomorrow, remove my keys from all school CPUs. Side note, I'm pretty sure the OS key doesn't have anything to do with the CPU. So I think this guy is just calling the entire computer the CPU. If any of you IT people know more, do leave a comment in the comment section. Needless to say, Phase 3 complete. There was 2 weeks left of school. Scholarship was mine. Whole story came out anyway. Turns out, he skimmed all the money he saved, and we spent the next 2 weeks without Evil Principal in sight. To be honest, I never learned his fate, but I know entitled kids. The attack. It was second last day of school. Entitled kid was out on bail or something. He was expelled. He decided to wait for me in the parking lot. As I was walking out, I see him. He sees me. I think he wants to apologize. Nope. Stares at me and walks away. I shrug and walk a block away. 2 football jocks across the street. Then I feel it. Hard punch to the back of my head. Entitled kid just sucker punched me, and he had me on the ground. I flipped to my back and back. Then, well, it's slow I know, but I fight dirty. As he's on top of me, hitting my face, I plant a knee right into his balls, destroying them. I went hard. He falls over and seethes in pain. I'm pissed though, but one of the jocks pulls me off, and I shit you not, the other says, "This is for my dead father's necklace," and stomps his hand as hard as he could. Entitled kid passes out. Cops show up, same ones as before, and now he gets assault and possession of a deadly weapon. He had a knife. Hauled off to ER. Then jail. Fall caused me to twist my ankle, and I was limping. After the dust clears, A few months go by, and I find that he gets 10 years prison time, and I regret nothing. Should have just not stolen credit for my work. Some of you will say I went too far. I want you to know, you're correct. Don't with me. Well, is that what you guys think? Do you think he went too far? Let us know in the comments. Cheat on me with my best friend? I'll wreck your career and publicly humiliate both of you. Shithead and Sarah have been like my family to my wife and I for several years, practically ever since we moved in across the street from them. The four of us were extremely tight. Our kids are the same age as theirs, and they're all good friends. We were one big family unit. We did dinner together a few times a week. We went on vacations together. I truly saw Shithead as a brother, and my wife and Sarah were very close too. 5 months ago, I was completely blindsided by the discovery of an affair between my wife and Shithead. My wife had left her email open on our computer, and I saw an email from her to her longtime therapist saying that Shithead would be joining her at an upcoming session. Again. WTF? My mind started racing. Why in the world would Shithead be going to her therapy sessions without my knowledge? I did a search and found some other emails to and from the therapist proving that Shithead had been going to sessions together with her for about 6 weeks. I checked our mobile account and discovered that since last summer they had been exchanging hundreds of texts every day, peaking at nearly 500 per day by the holidays. Speaking of the holidays, my friend and I hosted both of our families, parents, siblings, etc., for both Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner, and Shithead and Sarah joined us either for dinner or after dinner on both holidays. Text records show that the entire time they were at our house celebrating with our families, my wife and Shithead were texting each other across the room. They were doing that pretty much every time the four of us hung out, for months, and you know, all day every day, just in general. But what bothers me the most is that they were doing it with Sarah and I right there. I confronted my wife with the evidence, and she admitted that yes, she and Shithead had fallen in love. It just happened. I don't know how, but I love him, and I just don't feel anything for you anymore. I'm sorry. They had gone on a school district trip together, something that happened in her hotel room, and things had moved quickly from there. She explained, as I lay face down on the couch, unable to look at her, that they had already made plans to move out and divorce me and Sarah. And while they didn't plan to move in together immediately because of the kids, they'd probably do so eventually. The meetings with the therapist were supposedly mostly for the purpose of finding a way to break this to me and Sarah as gently as possible, because they were so very concerned for our well-being. Sarah and I are fairly certain that they weren't planning on telling us about the affair at all, and were simply going to discover their feelings for one another several months down the line, after they come up with some other reason to divorce the two of us. My wife moved out 2 months ago. I was, and still am, utterly destroyed. I cry every day. I cried writing the first few paragraphs of this story just now. I worry non-stop about the impact on our kids, but I'm also not exactly a shirking violet when I feel that I've been wronged. And in this case, I was, objectively, very, very wronged. So, a couple of years ago, Shithead ran for a Board of Education seat as a pretty extreme underdog. I helped him with his campaign materials and debate prep, and my wife, a well-known school district employee, this becomes important later, got the word out as best she could. Much to our surprise, he actually won in a squeaker, just by a few dozen votes. Being on the board became the center of Shithead's world. He joined every committee that he could. This turned into the foundation of his affair with my wife, as they were constantly going to school events and meetings together on evenings and weekends. Once I discovered the affair, my thoughts turned pretty quickly to revenge, and it occurred to me that an extramarital affair between a member of the Board of Education and an employee of the school district was at least bad politics and possibly violated district policy. Making things far worse for them was that my wife was in the running for an open administrative position, and everyone knew that she was more or less guaranteed the job and the major pay raise that came with it. She had just finished her master's degree in school administration at the urging of her principal and the superintendent, so that she could be promoted to this specific position. I had plenty of evidence of the affair, texts from both of them admitting to it, text records showing they were texting hundreds of times a day, and emails to and from the therapist, etc. I considered simply emailing all the evidence to the board and the superintendent, but felt like I, as the grieving betrayed spouse, might not be seen as a credible source. So instead, I invented a fictitious, furious friend who was planning on showing up to the next board meeting and publicly shaming the two of them for the affair. I told my wife that I'd try to talk this person down, but couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't show up and humiliate them publicly. As I expected, this led Shithead to conclude that the only option was for him to preemptively admit the affair to the board. The superintendent subsequently recommended that Shithead resign, which he did. Sarah said he was utterly humiliated and crushed, and barely got out of bed for the few days afterwards. Once word of the affair and Shithead's resignation started getting around, the superintendent, a longtime friend of both my wife and Shithead, contacted my wife and tearfully informed her that it was no longer politically appropriate for her to be promoted to administrative position within the district. The position that had been lined up for her was filled by an outside candidate. This sent waves of confusion and rumor throughout the district, as it was pretty well known that my wife was getting the job. The day after she was informed that she wasn't getting the promotion, my wife and I, despite our crumbling marriage, took our son out to breakfast together on his birthday, and a parent stopped by our table to congratulate her on her new role. She said thanks, then excused herself to go and cry in the bathroom for a while. I let the dust settle for a couple of weeks, and then, right before my wife moved out, let them in on my little secret. There was never a furious friend threatening to expose them in the first place. Just me. Word of all this has gotten around our fairly small town, which Shithead grew up in, and my wife has worked in for nearly 20 years. My wife refuses to talk to me about how things are at work now, but I've heard from some people I know in the district that her formerly spotless reputation has taken a major hit. Shithead, formerly a gregarious social presence in our neighborhood and at events and pubs in town, has completely gone underground and barely emerges to mow his lawn. He's moving out soon, to a shitty little townhouse, which is all he can afford due to all the child support he's going to have to pay his wife. My wife and Shithead claim that they plan on trying to make things work together, despite all the public humiliation. I wish them lots of luck with that. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun to show their faces in town. Another pro-revenge story where they got the cheaters to expose themselves. That's always satisfying, isn't it? If you want more where that came from, simply click on one of these boxes right here. And if you liked the video, I assume you did since you're still here, share it with your friends to see what they think. And of course, if you haven't already, click the kitty to subscribe and you'll never miss another video. I'll see you in the next episode of Reddit Chronicles.